Hello, and welcome to the CDO Magazine interview series. My name is Patrick Martin. I'm a business development manager for Lingaro, and we are partnering with CDO Magazine, MIT CDO IQ, and the International Society of Chief Data Officers in a series of interviews. Today, I have the pleasure of talking with Dan Merzalak, who is the head of business analytics and sales insights for the London Stock Exchange Group, and looking very forward to this. A good combination of corporate positions as well as consulting positions with companies such as Kerberos, Capital Management, PwC, E&Y, and now the London Stock Exchange. Tell us how your career experiences have positioned you for your current leadership role as Global Head of Business Analytics and Sales Insights.
Great. Thanks, Patrick. It's really nice to speak with you as well, and thanks for having me on for the chat. I'm looking forward to our conversation. So, as you mentioned, I began my career in analytics management consulting with the Big Four, where I was exposed to a variety of different industries and spent time as an individual contributor and team leader, creating analytics strategies and tools. I then went on to work for Kerberos Capital Management, a private equity firm based out of New York City, in their commercial operations group, where I spent time inside of portfolio companies serving in interim roles in operations and analytics functions to maximize our investments. And finally, I landed over at what at the time was Refinitiv as the head of business analytics and sales insights, where I run a global team of business intelligence directors and data scientists responsible for reports, dashboards, and analytics to our leadership team and the sales and account management organization. We very recently went through an acquisition by the London Stock Exchange Group. And as of last month, actually, Refinitiv is officially part of LSEG. So that's how I got into my current role. I think I bring a unique perspective to our operations group here because I spent a lot of time being in the weeds, building data flows and processes. And so I know how the sausage is made, but I also focus on driving value with the business end goal in mind. I think a lot of time in the industry, people start with the data, and I don't really think that's the best approach. And I think that's largely shaped by my prior experiences being focused on driving business value first. You should always start with the business problem you're trying to solve and the stakeholders you're trying to influence. And then, get the problem structured, work backwards to the data set to make sure it's created the right way and the analytics are crafted in such a way that they're able to service the use case at hand. But data ultimately is only as good as its ability to drive value. And usually that means operationalizing it into workflows, enabling self-service, and really making sure that business users understand both how and why they're doing something.
Excellent. Your role is a very transformational position. The term transformational means a lot of different things to different people. What does it mean to you and to the LSEG group?
Yeah, as you said, transformational is a word that means a lot of different things depending on who you ask and the context. To me, being transformational in my environment means to implement data-driven decision-making through the right metrics, which is as much a cultural change as it is the creation of the right reports and dashboards.
Absolutely.
So for me, when I build new tools, try to guide people to a single source of truth for their use case, I always try to make sure the analytics I'm trying to evangelize, so to speak, are better than the current state. So what value add am I bringing to what they have in the ecosystem today? So, often it's a combination of standardization across the enterprise, data integrity, different views and abilities to slice and dice the data, and then ultimately prescriptive insights into how to use that data to drive the next best action. So explainability and transparency to drive people towards these new changes is important to making sure people aren't just changing because they have to, but really because they want to. So, one example I'll talk about is, how I've been able to accomplish this transformational thinking in my current organization is, really by using data to guide meaningful conversations. So, what we did is we exposed client retention data in our executive reports and dashboards by win-loss reason, which enabled our account managers and sales readiness teams to hone in on why a customer is canceling our services, and then creating more customized go-to-market strategies when talking to customers that tend to cancel a certain way with preemptive solutions to their needs. Whereas before we were showing this data, these customized approaches weren't really feasible because the visibility of the granular data and the summarized insights highlighting the top loss reasons were not available. So, I think ultimately in order to get transformation accomplished, you need people and processes in place. And both of these are important drivers of getting transformation moving. And I try to make sure they're aligned in the right way when approaching a new business challenge.
Excellent. I like what you said about the why. I think that is so important, especially when you're talking about the organizational impact and why people are doing it. So excellent. As the executive in charge of data and analytics, you establish long-term data strategy and vision for the organization. We all know it's paramount to have value delivery. Return on investment is always a critical success factor for any project. How do you quantify and measure value and attribute success to efforts that may not directly impact the bottom line?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think is always on top of everyone's minds because people want to measure ROI on their investments and initiatives. So for value delivery, there are a number of both operational and financial metrics that we track on an ongoing basis in executive reports and scorecards. For the sales and account management organization, for example, we track 4 key groups of KPIs related to people, customer success, pipeline management, and forecasting. And then collectively, we measure how the KPIs are tracking on a month-over-month, year-over-year, and versus benchmarks that the business identifies as success. These are influenced by many different groups in the business. So attribution based on distinct initiative is often a difficult challenge, I think, in many organizations. So when we're launching a new initiative, like scoring and identifying high-quality pipeline for sellers, which we actually just launched yesterday, we try to pilot the work stream and measure success compared to a control group. So the associated lift of the pilot group against the expected performance based on control groups can give us a total lift for criteria like pipeline hygiene, top line revenue, enabling better performance management conversations and things like that. Data initiatives in general, I think, can be examined from a more traditional perspective, like new business models and long-term investment for go-to-market strategies, territory optimization, cost reduction, improved customer, or really just better decision-making in general. Delivering, timely, consistent information for a use case like forecasting and increasing accuracy is another example of adding value using data in my current organization. Other examples of how exposing data can influence positive behavior is opportunity management in our CRM system. So, for example, we've begun exposing commit, forecast, conversion rate by seller and geography. And when an opportunity is marked as commit, we believe it should convert with over 90% certainty in the CRM Salesforce on the indicated close date. Once we started tracking this data and exposing it, we identified some large gaps, though, to that success benchmark. So we saw that many of these opportunities in commit during the month actually shifted their close date out into the future each month rather than closing one. And when the sellers saw how their conversion rates were being tracked and able to see how they were performing compared to each other, kind of facilitating almost that competitive environment as well, their pipeline conversion rates increased almost immediately. So operational behavior changes are great indicators of how data is really being used to drive positive change. And it's important to understand, I think, in general, that for operational use cases, data initiatives bring a ton of qualitative positive change to an organization. In my remit, I often focus on enabling the sales field. If the sales field believes that they have the data they need to do their jobs optimally, and the executives feel like they're able to measure the business and use the tools I've provided to drive positive change, and I feel like I've personally added value.
Very good. You mentioned people and process. There's also technology. What's your biggest challenge that you've encountered thus far? Which of those three, or is it a combination? Or
yeah, it's an interesting question, because I think all three of those you mentioned, people, process, technology, right, are all very interlinked in how they play out in a large organization. But ultimately, if you don't have the right people, you can't change process and technology. If you don't have the right people, I think you'll be dead in the water. So the biggest challenge is finding and hiring talent, and then enabling the talent the right way. So for employees that are already in the building, it's important to invest in upskilling and talent development to make sure that people have the right skills to deliver on the data initiatives in flight. And this can be formal training programs or on-the-job development. You also have to make sure that people are aligned to your vision. It's important that people believe in what you're doing, not because they have to, but because it's the right thing to drive the business forward. So clarifying the company and team objectives through transparent plans and making progress towards milestones is instrumental to execution. There may be some stragglers that are used to old ways of running things, but I've noticed that in my experience, once you get most of the business on board, these folks will also get aligned. I think processes are also important to cultivate, and once the people are in place, to make sure there's an organized rhythm to getting things done. Nowadays there's been a transition to self-service analytics and serving up insights much quicker than previously thought was possible. But it really lets people focus on using these tools and data and providing data-driven insights into the next action, and building operational processes that harness the data, tie it to the company vision, and ultimately, of course, drive value. The last one, technology, for me, I think is more of an enabler. There are many tools that do the same thing, and they have different strengths and weaknesses. It's always important to choose the right technology for the use case at hand, of course. And newer tools like Snowflake over, say, Microsoft SQL Server for databases can shorten query times, but rarely are the existing tools at any mature company nowadays really a deal breaker to accomplishing initiatives. So from my perspective, I try to go into every situation taking into account of what technology is available to me, and then map out a plan using that, while in parallel thinking about how to optimize possibly with new technologies in a future state.
Very good. Yeah, it's generally acknowledged the pace of change in this space is just so rapid and very dynamic. And because of that, there's new technologies, there's service providers, there's all different types of help you can get, which you've got to get some external help at times. How do you identify and develop mutually beneficial relationships with key technology and service partners. And in addition to that, what are the key attributes you're looking for?
Yeah, I've had good success with outside vendors that understand how to drive value in the business rather than run a hands-off approach once their tool is bought and deployed. So I think mutually beneficial relationships with vendors are important because a vendor will want to increase visibility of their tool in an organization and even dependency on themselves. And I think the easiest way to do that is to make sure the services they provide drive success at the customer. I've been able to bring vendors from one company to another after changing jobs because of prior success with implementing the vendor's tool. So I think it's very important for partners to focus on delivering value and operationalize the tools they provide until the tool is well integrated into a company's workflow and the company can be self-sufficient, leveraging the platform or strategic recommendation provided and ultimately implemented. If partners do not focus on value, I think it'll be harder to market the ROI of the tool for new customers and also, just as importantly, maintain ongoing relationships at existing clients for retention. I think some partners really provide a lot of hands-on support and work with their own customer success team at the company to deploy solutions. So, for example, I've worked with an AutoML vendor, and I'm currently trying to deploy them here at LSEG. They're a vendor that provides data science as a platform and enables citizen data scientists to use their software and create various machine learning algorithms for use cases without the need of a heavy data science skill set. When I previously worked with this vendor at a prior employer, they provided thought leadership to get the ball rolling and had PhD data scientists from their company come in to help build pilots using their platform and take the users through the model development process end to end. Including variable selection, data cleaning, operationalizing the output back into the enterprise data warehouse so it can feed downstream tools like Tableau. The vendor even, I remember, held weekly office hours to make sure users are using the tool effectively. Wow. At no extra cost. And I think that type of interaction is incredibly helpful because the vendor clearly had a vested interest in our company using the software to its maximum capabilities. And it's actually part of the reason why more and more data science tools were created using their platform as well.
So what would you say how do you stay current with the latest trends and innovations? How do you keep a pulse on that?
So I keep up to date by reading about changing technology and the landscape on sites like TechCrunch, for example. I follow companies on LinkedIn and other news outlets. I'm also an avid believer in continuous education and further my understanding of the latest trends through various degree and certification programs. Publications from the big consulting companies like McKinsey, PwC, Deloitte are helpful. Another thing that's helpful is the yearly Gartner Magic Quadrants that come out and rank the big players in the analytics ecosystem that describe new trends in the market and what various companies are pursuing. When deciding on new innovations, I try to think about what is in the current company ecosystem before trying to bring on a new tool or technology and carefully kind of consider the problem I'm trying to solve. There are a lot of considerations based on who's at the company that can implement the innovation and keep it running once it's in place, what processes we have to operationalize it, and which additional technologies outside of the company can be brought in to help solve the business need. Of course, the cost of the solution needs to be kept in mind to show a high ROI. As an example of a new innovation, we have various platforms at LSEG that provide no-code data science tools, but they lack robustness of explainability of record level predictions and scope of modeling capabilities. So I'm trying to bring that vendor that I previously mentioned to help provide this transparency to our predictive models and push the output to the sales field via our CRM and in our dashboards as well.
Excellent. So another question kind of related is how important is networking with other data and analytics executives outside of your organization? Is it a priority for you? And what resources or organizations do you use?
Yeah, networking with others in the data and analytics space is very important, and I hope to be able to increase my presence in these communities. Speaking with like-minded professionals can bring new opportunities to understand how other people in your industry are solving similar problems. Many times I've been able to get a nuanced point of view on a common problem in my space, and it sparks a new thought of how I can integrate something like what I've heard into my own workflows. Exchanging ideas, broadening your horizon is a really important part of professional development. So one platform that has been very helpful is, of course, LinkedIn, where you can follow many thought leaders, organizations, and chat with like-minded individuals. I've attended several data and analytics conferences, both virtually and in person back when we could travel, where I was able to hear panel speakers, talk to many ongoing trends in the market and their own experiences on leveraging data analytics at their organizations. There I was also able to interact with vendors in my space that have interesting solutions. I also maintain a strong network of colleagues from prior employers and make sure that I keep in touch with like-minded individuals. I've hired people that I've worked with in the past, and likewise, they have hired me. So keeping those connections has helped me hire and retain top talent within my network.
Excellent. Great lead into my next question. So as a leader, you're only as good as your team. You win together, you lose together. It's been said that culture is king. What's your secret to recruiting and retaining? You mentioned that, your network and things like that, but I guess how does your management style lend itself to building a strong team?
Yeah. So as I mentioned, hiring top talent is an ongoing theme that helps organizations really perform at their best. So I like to make the team feel like they're working on high impact deliverables that drive the business forward. It's important to make sure employees feel a sense of ownership and are not just sitting on the sidelines taking requests, but interacting with the business stakeholders that are using their tools, dashboards, and analytics. If they're involved in the business conversations, they will always have a better understanding of how and why they're creating new dashboards. From a management perspective, I like to make sure that I can keep my pulse on what motivates individuals and make sure employees are rewarded effectively for their great work. I still stay in the weeds, and because I spent a lot of time writing SQL code and building BI tools and dashboards and softwares like Tableau. I do technical reviews for high value projects to ensure quality and add another layer of QA. And I also like to be very transparent in terms of the items we're all working on as a group, which, one limits rework. But I also think people stay motivated by seeing each other's great work and trying to perform to the best of their ability.
Yep, that's excellent. I have one last question, and this is, I guess, a what if, but imagine you're mentoring a less experienced rising star who aspires to be in a role like yours. What advice would you give them that you've learned on your journey that could help accelerate their career?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it's important to take risk in your career and explore opportunities that give you the biggest chance of personal and professional development, even if it makes you a little uncomfortable at first. Most people learn on the job as they go, and putting in the effort will usually be enough to perform at that next level when you're ready. For me personally, having the technical skills from the beginning of my career helped me a lot, because I can understand how to take a business idea from inception to data requirements to completion, end to end. I would encourage aspiring data leaders to understand technical requirements, although they won't have to be coding Python or R all day in leadership positions. I think it'll help guide them in developing projects and understanding what people, tools, and timelines will be necessary to push the project through. A data leader also needs to be a technical translator of sorts and be able to decipher data projects for a business audience. So they really need to be able to articulate value to other business leaders and deliver insights that matter. I would just recommend that an aspiring data leader always keep the business value of their work at top of mind. Science projects are always fun, but if they're not ultimately delivering value, they still end up kind of being thrown to the sidelines. If finally, I would also find a sponsor at your organization, work with them to get feedback, and help them deliver results. Finding a person that understands your value and can advocate for you is important in moving up the ladder and getting buy-in when delivering ideas to an audience within your organization.
Very good points. Thank you very much. Dan, it was such a pleasure to speak with you today. I thoroughly enjoyed it. Really appreciate your insights and being so open with us. I'd also like to thank all the viewers, and I encourage you to please visit the cdomagazine.tech for additional interviews. Thank you and have a great day.
Thank you, Patrick.